And
one of them wanted to be the security guy. He claimed he was a security guy. One of them wanted to be the security guy. He claimed he was a security guy.
well, I screwed that one up, didn't I? A little rough on the opening there, but welcome to Security Guy Radio, our debut here at livestream.com and our, would you say, a teeny-weeny studio? Would that be a good way to describe it, Ms. Nikki?
Very, very small.
Again, we were talking about relative, so it is smaller.
It's a little small, but professional. So
It's bigger than a closet.
Well, we have a real exciting... before we get started, I wanted to show you guys one thing. A friend of mine in Chicago just started a new organization called dvpolicy.org. That's Pam Patsiotopoulos. And so I want Pam to... she has a little fundraiser going on next week, and I want to show everybody a graphic on that so you guys can help her with the cause. This is DV... Well, not Chuck Harold. Wait a minute. We're going to get rid of Chuck Harold. There we go. It's dvpolicy.org, and they're out of Chicago. And on April 6th, they're having a fundraiser. And she is a former district attorney in Chicago who started their domestic violence unit 20 years ago when they didn't have one. Mm-hmm. So it's a good cause for everybody. So you guys can log into that and take a look at domestic policy and to help her with some fundraising, all right? Very good. Now, let's see if we can get my buttons. Now, I want everybody to bear with me today because I got to push all the buttons because we don't have an engineer. It's a low-budget operation. You can see the cheap seats we have from Office Depot and the cheap folding tables that look really fancy. But I want to welcome my first guest. I have two guests today, but one's my co-host. But first, Steve Gowin. And welcome to the show, Steve. How are you?
Good. I'm good. Thank you very much.
Now, tell us what exactly it is that you do. What's your name, your company, and all that kind of stuff.
So I run a targeted motivational engagement. I started that a couple years ago, and pretty much it's targeted to what users want. So what I do is if someone wants a leadership seminar or talks, I'll do that. I do one-on-ones with parents, team sports, competitive sports, how to work good within a team, get that extra drive. Pretty much everybody knows what they really need to do. They just need that little extra push. And I do parent-kid fostering, help kind of find a career-driven objectives for the kids, keep them on track. Sometimes we all know that kids sometimes don't want to listen to their parents, and it just takes a third person to come in and kind of say the exact same thing, but it seems to work out pretty good.
Now, give us the name of your website, because I'm trying to get it up on the screen here for everybody to see it, but I'm failing miserably.
The number 3ArrowTME.com.
There's Steve, right there. All right, now we get your graphic up there for you. All right, Steve Gowin, TME. Now,
Yep.
What I want to talk to you about today, and Miss Nikki too, so I'm really concerned about the state of law enforcement, right? And I was interested in having you on the show because I think your training kind of ties into this. You are active law enforcement.
Yes.
We're not going to say the agency. It's
Right.
not really important. And you have this motivational training that really reaches the ground level. And I think this is important for people to understand. Just give us a little brief outline of what you do with that. There's 3 levels to it, right? And I want to tie that into what's going on in the community right now.
So for leadership, the ground level leadership in law enforcement is really what drives the department. There's the theory style leadership that makes manuals, delivers all that stuff out down to the troops, but really the driver, kind of like the military, the NCOs are the backbone of the military. The officers really drive that leadership, and sergeants, and then your specialty teams that have leadership built within them.
All right. Now, Miss Nikki, tell us what you do and how you play into this. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm a reserve officer for a small police department
Wait, I better take this picture off your head first so we can see you. There we go.
in Oklahoma, and I do security consulting for businesses, and I help them create emergency action plans, run their drills, become OSHA compliant.
OSHA compliant. Tell us more about that because that's really important.
So OSHA has the general duty clause, which they came out with in I think the 70s. In 2011, they added an amendment and used verbiage that says a recognizable hazard. 2013, a court ruled that active shooter is considered a recognizable hazard, and there was a lawsuit that was filed against a company, and they had to settle 2 pretty big lawsuits over an active shooter event that happened there. The problem is there's so many companies that don't know that this law exists, and as law enforcement, we know that ignorance of the law is not an excuse to break it.
Exactly. All right. So here's my first question for you, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
What the heck is going on with Rick from The Walking Dead? What is going on with this guy? Okay, we got a law enforcement officer. I'm going to give him a break.
You're going to love my answer.
He wakes up in a hospital after being injured on duty. And, of course, being injured on duty, he'll never get that claim fixed. That's another story we'll talk about. And everybody's dead. And now he has to assume these leadership roles. He gets everybody in the show killed. And look at they keep coming back in flashback cameos. But last night, that whole Negan thing, I don't know what was going on there. And I'm only half making fun because you know what I'm talking about, right?
No, because I've never seen the show.
You've never seen the show.
That's why I said you'd love my answer.
Okay, well, I mean, you know what I'm talking about, Nikki.
Yeah, and I didn't watch last night, so
it was a great episode.
I haven't got caught up yet. You're going to ruin it.
I won't give anything away, but he is literally a police officer that woke up in the middle of the Walking Dead apocalypse, and he keeps leading this band of people that he picks up along the way. He always winds up being the leader, and every time he has a plan, everybody gets killed. The guest stars get killed. He goes in, and last night was really, I saw that coming a million miles away. So you don't see the show, but I'm only half jesting because this is a police officer in leadership role who was just a patrol guy, right? Mm-hmm. And I see this translated in the media when I go out and I find people making really not great decisions. And I say to myself, you know what? I'll bet you he was trying to follow some stupid policy. And he couldn't do it in the field. It wasn't practical. And he did the best he could. Instead of him making his own individual leadership decision, that would have made the outcome better. Am I off base on that?
No, you're right. And I think with leadership within law enforcement, you're only as strong as your leadership allows you to be. So you're directed to some extent. And you do have manuals and revisions that you got to follow and SOPs. But usually there's that, and I'll give you my perspective on it. So there's an 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, that manual or that SOP is going to apply to what you do. But we don't live in a black and white world. We live in a gray world. We operate in a gray world.
Right.
That 20% of flex, I need you to flex and make a decision that the answer's not there in the SOP or the manual. You know what I mean?
Right. So back in the day, we were given the latitude to make an independent judgment. In fact, in California, there is a law that used to be that said police officers have discretion to carry out their duties.
Right.
And there was no affirmative duty to act except in very rare cases. I'm not sure if that's changed, but we certainly were given that 80% to go out and do something. But if we had to make it better, as long as it fulfilled the objectives of the department, we did it. And now I'm not seeing that. Now I'm seeing people say, oh, I don't want to do anything. Or, Nikki, before the show we were talking about that story in California where cops stopped arresting people now. The arrest rate in California is plummeting.
Yes.
Right?
There was a big article
That's
on
wacky.
LA Times.
Yeah. I think cops are just afraid to do anything. So, Steve, tell me about what the motivational ground level approach to this can be to fix this problem, because I think guys are just frozen into doing anything because there's so many policies. It's so heavy, they don't get discretion on top of it, and I don't know if they can make a decision. They're not motivated to make a decision, right?
Well, I think there's some degree to that as far as people don't want to do anything because they fear they were going to get in trouble. But what they'll do is they'll take the media outcry and they'll apply it to what they do. But for the most part, it really doesn't apply. If you're doing something that's just and you're doing your job correctly, we all understand that you can fall into this bad incident where it looks really, really, really bad.
Right.
Right. And then
optics.
Right. And no one wants to be involved in that, so they just stop producing. But you can still go out and produce. You can still do what you're paid to do.
Isn't it hard, though? It's difficult.
It's hard. Don't get me wrong. It's hard. I understand that. It's very hard. But you got to. So for leadership, like if you have a sergeant that's running a squad.
Right.
And you have 7 guys on that squad, and 4 of them don't want to do anything, but 3 of them produce. And they go out and they do arrest and they do contacts and they're talking to people, right? That motivation comes within other people on the squad. It's also not just the sergeant that motivates everybody, but the sergeant by, 1, taking care of his troops, 2, relaying information. Everyone loves communication. Keep everybody informed, right? But sometimes it takes someone from them, then the squad themselves, to go to the other person and say, look what you do for a living. It can be dangerous. I'm not taking that away.
Right.
But you get to go out and talk to nice people. You get to deal with the bad, but you also get to talk to nice people. And you have to look at it like that. Because if you step back and say, now go get another job, then they wouldn't take another job. They say, no, because of the benefits and stuff, right? And it's hard. Don't get me wrong. You can take a guy that just watches the media at home, that goes to his job and puts his heart and soul in his job, and the national media makes you feel like what you're doing is unjust.
You know, you can tell by the white hair I'm a little older, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, Steve's arms, I just checked, they are bigger than my legs. And normally I don't let people on the show who have arms bigger than my legs, but I'm a rare exception for you today because you have a good message. You know, we didn't have that kind of feedback where people were just, you know, on you. If there was media, it was very local.
Yeah.
It was the San Gabriel Tribune that nobody read, except in San Gabriel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you could overcome the politics. And sure, people took pictures and people called and complained and things like this. But now you're really an actor on a stage, a world stage with a camera. And anybody can see what you're doing. And I don't think it's difficult to teach people how to behave like heroes, as I like to call it, right? I just think they're afraid because we have poor leadership at the admin level. And here's why I think it is. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
The chiefs used to be civil servants.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you had to fire the chief for cause. You had to have a checklist and had to have a hearing. And in California, they call it a Skelly hearing and all this kind of stuff, right? And now, most chiefs that I know of are appointed by the mayor or city council, right? Except the sheriff, or sheriff is elected.
Right.
And you can see in almost any county, look at Apio in Arizona. The guy did whatever he wanted to do, and nobody could do anything about it because he was elected.
Right.
And I think taking away this civil servant position of a chief changes the whole presentation. What chief wants to say, oh, sanctuary city, that's a great idea? Because there's no chief that likes the laws being broken, period, right? But if he's beholden to his job to the mayor, he's not going to change his mind because he'll get fired. And then I think that trickles down.
It does. And I'll give you one word that will summarize the leadership now is politics.
Right.
So much politics is involved in law enforcement now. It almost bleeds over where you can't do your job because it's so political. And again, going back to your question is, nobody wants to do anything because they don't want to end up on TV. And there's some real ramifications for that, because go put a camera on a neurosurgeon. You know what I mean?
Right.
Dictate every movement he does based off no information.
Yeah, nobody will criticize that, by the way, because nobody's even close to that level, and people assume they can just go out and do a cop job.
They'll criticize it because people feel
The
they have
surgeon,
the right to.
they'll criticize?
If they feel that what that surgeon did caused them an emotional response, they will criticize. And the more emotional they are with their response, the more of a subject matter expert they suddenly become. And they do the same thing. They do it with cops. But you look at some doctor gets in trouble for malpractice, and the media gets a hold of the story, and it goes out, and now it's on Facebook, it's everywhere. And all of a sudden, everything that surgeon did is under a microscope, and it's horrible. And it doesn't matter that the people that are judging him didn't go to medical school.
Right.
Some of them didn't even go to college.
Right.
It doesn't matter. They have that emotional response, so therefore I have a stage. I'm going to start talking about it, and my opinion matters. Whether or not I know anything about what I'm talking about, I have an opinion, so I'm going to say it.
Well, we've never let facts get in the way, on Security Guy Radio, that's for sure.
Right.
But you have to have some kind of ability to say, I'm not going to comment on that until I find out what the facts are. And I always say this, I see anything on the media. Everybody gets all upset, blasting out things on Facebook and Twitter, and I say, in about 3 days, we'll know what happened. Right now, we don't have any idea. Oh, no, they said this over here. You know that. It's never the same.
Nobody wants to vet anything out anymore. As soon as they get the tidbit of information, they'll put it out, and you'll ask them, and they'll ask opinions, and wait. Because there's more information that comes out. That's why they call it an investigation.
Right.
Right.
That's why they call it an investigation
Exactly.
and not a cheese sandwich. That's right. Now, tell me how you motivate guys nowadays. We were motivated by the fact that I had a really cool job. I had a great insurance policy. I had a lot of good friends. It was a lot of fun.
Did you have a lot of support from your higher-ups?
Oh, yeah. We had some serious support. Chief Cook, Culver City, boy, that guy, he was the troops for the troops.
So with the politics that we're seeing now, are we seeing less support for our guys? Are we seeing agencies who, as soon as something comes out without investigating anything, they're throwing their own guys under the bus because, they have to make an exception, or they have to make an example out of them. And, you know, it's good.
We get
for-
into push and blame also, and it all rolls down a little bit of hill, right? And it's hard to stand up for someone because you get dragged through the mud along with them and stuff like that. But we've turned the corner of doing the right thing is not doing the right thing anymore. It's to self-protect, and we self-protect. You know what I mean? And it's hard. I mean, if you take a guy...
You mean the cops self-protect themselves?
Well, as far
What?
as like administrator backing their own guys.
Oh, that's self-protect.
So, you know
Yeah,
what I
it's
mean?
always the admin
Well,
first.
you take someone that makes $100,000 a year, and they know if they stand up for you, you know what I mean?
Right.
Then they're going to be, hey, am I going to get rugged through the mud on this one? And it looks bad, and the P word comes in, the politics come in,
Right.
and then stuff happens, you become collateral damage.
See, here's what I don't get, though. The great thing about our jobs, and by the way, Miss Nikki, you're a reserve,
I am.
right? So that's a little different perspective, too, because you
It's-
kind of come and go and see different levels of it. But it's a job that has more rules and more policies than anybody. And all we have to do is follow them. And all I see a lot of times is guys saying, I'm not following that policy. I'm going to go outside policy, and then we're going to get smacked, and then I'm going to get in trouble. Instead of being able to take the policy, articulate that you should have done it a different way, right? Writing a good report about it and making an exception to it. And I don't see probable cause arrests as much. I don't see guys doing proactive stuff. I don't know. I mean, I've been out of it, so I want to be fair to everybody, but I just get this general sense that most people are kind of down on the morale. Does that make sense?
The morale is down. There's
Just
no
kind
doubt
of
about
across
it.
the country, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, just
Yeah.
look at the public, the
Yeah.
media. The media portrays it in a very, very bad light. And like you said, everyone can question it, you know what I mean? And you're like, so what's your background? You don't have it, but you can question it, and they listen to them. So it's kind of hard right now.
They have a Facebook account. That's really all that matters.
Right.
That's all they need.
Well,
Very different from your time.
yeah. Well, now, let's not say your time. I think that sounds a little too
My
a
bad.
little too old, but maybe not. I think one thing that's interesting is that when I was a young cop, we followed policy. We were afraid to lose our job. We thought it was very important not to. We tried to behave a certain way. But I did go to the police academy in Napa about 2 years ago to get recertified. So, by the way, this is the only post-certified licensed private investigation, licensed guard company, CCW radio show that I know of, just in case you guys are interested. So I went up here to Napa Valley Police Academy. I got recertified. Their logo on their badge was a hot air balloon. So it didn't exactly strike fear into the minds of criminals, right?
Right.
But it was effective enough that it was a good post-academy. So I get trained. I learned basically everything I learned 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That really didn't change. But here's what was different. End of the class, end of the day. Hey, you guys want to go get a beer? Nah, the young guys, 20-something. And the reason they're 20-something is they got hired at 21 and got laid off at 23 and couldn't get a job for 3 years. So their post certificate, that's your license, it expired. And I did not see that camaraderie. I did not see the morale. I did not see the brother-sisterhood participating. And I don't know why that is, unless this is just a whole shift in how people think.
Well, I think it's that a little bit as far as just times change. They constantly change. And then technology. You know what I mean?
Technology is a distractor.
Well, technology is a distractor, and you grow with it. I mean, it's just an ever-evolving thing, right?
Right.
Newer cars come out, you buy a newer car. New phones come out, you buy a newer phone, right? Everyone's connected to so many further different people that they would ever have been before, where if you and I work together, I can never really talk to my friend in Maine unless I call them on the telephone, right? I can't Facebook them or do anything like that.
Right.
So I spend a little bit more time with you.
I mean, when I was grandpa me, when we didn't have cell phones. But I did. I had a flip phone.
No, I meant like Facebook
Oh,
or,
okay.
you know what I mean?
No, but we did have,
Yeah.
we got a flip phone back in the 80s, and that was a big deal. But the bill was $2,000 a month, but it wasn't social media.
Right.
All right. But what I don't get is why the guys aren't, they don't seem to have this brother-sisterhood thing going on. Am I wrong about that, the younger ones? It's like this is just a job to them, and I'm going to go get another one. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think you will see pockets of that, and I don't want to generalize law enforcement in a whole. You know what I mean? Because like, I'll work and I'll get thanked every day from people that you would never think that support law enforcement.
Right.
They thank you, and it kind of you look at the national media and you're like, man, it's not really that bad because it's here affected you where you work at. You know what I mean? So I think you'll have pockets like that. People just kind of people are just different, and it's just like when your dad from his dad. The time, place, and distance, and from the 40s to the 60s are different. You know what I mean? So we're
Right.
talking 70s to the 2000s. It's just different how people were raised and stuff.
Now, Security Guy Radio Security Guy TV has lost a camera. We have a technical glitch. We have lost a camera, so we're on our last GoPro. Hopefully the battery does not run out. These things happen.
Yeah, they
when
do.
You have to push all the buttons yourself. Nikki, tell me about how you view this from a reserve perspective. Because you're not in as much, you're not connected as much, you kind of come and go.
I do. This actually works out great for me because I travel a lot for my company. But what I do see is we have a very small agency. So when I work, they work me just like you would a full-time officer. I just don't have the confines of, hey, this is your shift, this is when you have to go. I come in and it's, hey, we write this grant because we need this equipment. Hey, we have this happened. Tell us what's the best way to handle that. My background's a little different than the other 3 officers that I work with. When I look at county, because the county that backs us up, they're significantly bigger, and I look at how they do their leadership, and some of the guys who will cross-train with their SOT guys, and you can tell like some of them work very close, but I watched the guys go through the sheriff's election, and I watched how they were like, oh, yeah, we can't write tickets anymore. We can't do this anymore. We can't do that. And you're trying to understand what's going on with their agency, and then because then the way they were backing us up was not quite the same.
Right.
And then what the feedback that we're getting is, oh, hey, yeah, no, we can't do this because so-and-so wants to get elected. And then you're like, wow. But again, a lot of times perception is reality, and it's not my agency, so I don't know the ins and outs. What you get is just the feel from the other guys.
See, but if the chief wasn't reporting to the mayor, they would just run things independently and not worry about it. And I think the politicians feel they need to be in control because the police are evil and we're going to show them what to do. But then it becomes corrupt. And I think that's where most of the problem. I don't think guys don't know what to do. They're highly trained. Cops are more trained than when I was a cop.
Right.
Right? But they're not executing. And we were a bunch of cowboys untrained for the most part. 4 weeks, here's a gun, get out of the car and drive around. But we executed. We did things. And both have their effectiveness, right?
Yes.
So do you feel cops now are kind of backing off and being more cautious in their decisions, or because they don't want to be on film because of the camera? I mean, it all comes down to this. Everybody likes their job.
Yes.
Everybody wants to keep their job.
Yes.
Everybody that does not want to lose their house and get sued.
Right.
And I get really pissed off when I hear all these shows about, cops are executioners and cops want to kill people. Yeah, that's right. We want to go take our house away and all our jet skis. It's not what's happening.
Right.
Maybe there's some bad decisions, but it's not a pandemic of things.
It's scrutiny. People just don't want to be scrutinized. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's hard for a human to go out there and do something and know right after the fact of doing it that you're going to be scrutinized. So you're more cautious when you approach certain things. It's just human nature.
Tell us how you would teach a typical class and train people on this.
Well,
How do you get people motivated? I mean, it can be. Now, by the way, is it the same for cops as it is for an office group?
No, it's just a different drive.
Okay.
But here's the thing, because I don't really do cops, so I do public sector for my business.
Right.
So if somebody came in and said, hey, can you do how do we get guys motivated? Guys aren't motivated. And sometimes the reality check to people puts it in the forefront for people. And you take it individually for me. I can't just do a group thing. I got to fill out where everyone's at. You might just have one bad seed that infects everyone. Everyone's fine, but they just get infected by one. And the more straightforward talk you have with the individual, is your life really that bad? It's
Right.
not. I can show you 100 people that are worse off than you. And you put it in perspective for them. And they realize they just get beat down with, I don't know, I mean, go on Facebook. There's so much negativity, right?
Facebook's.
Right? You were just looking at it when we came
No,
down
it's
here.
terrible. Yeah.
So it's all the negativity, and what happens, you just by default, you fall into it. If you look at your family, you look at all this other stuff, you have it pretty good. You really do. And you make someone understand. You just bring perspective back to them. And a lot of times that'll help. And that'll help fix the seed. But there's many different ways. I can't just say magically one way because
Right.
you have to talk to the individual, you know? So as a group, you can do team building stuff that, hey, it's great that you can play the game of soccer, but can you win it by yourself? It's a team.
Right.
So where you're working at right now is a team. So one guy's running an assembly line. Can he do it by himself?
This
No.
question is for both you guys. Do we still have teamwork in police work?
Oh, yeah. I believe so.
Okay.
I mean, there's units that augment other units, and there's constant teamwork, and it would never, I think it would kind of help break down if it didn't
Right.
have teamwork, right? I think that it'll always be there because it's relied on teamwork.
See, now back in the day, we were told if you had a morale problem, that was your personal problem. That's what we were told. Seriously. I
Right.
mean, I had more than one commander tell me that kind of
Right.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
But the only time we think we had a morale problem was probably when, I don't know, an officer got hurt or an officer got killed or, some kind of a serious thing. A lawsuit maybe against the department didn't seem fair, something like that. What's dragging morale down now? Is it the media? Is this optics that everybody hates you? Because I don't think that's a reality, by the way. I think those are, optics and reality are two different things.
I agree with you.
Okay?
I absolutely agree with you on that one.
So optics are, we're all a bunch of goose-stepping Nazis. We want to execute people, right?
Right.
That's the optics of media. They would think you to believe that. But listen, police officers, firefighters, nurses, first responders, all these people that deal with the public, they're some of the best people on earth, really.
Mm-hmm.
And do they make mistakes like some other people? Sure they do. But it's not a pandemic like everybody's saying.
Right.
So tell us what's really going on, and what do you think the separation between the optics and the reality is? Optics can't account for all of it.
Right.
As police officers, we have to contribute to that somehow. So how are we contributing to that bad optic? What do you think?
So I think there's a bleed over with optic with the P word again, political.
Okay.
Because how it's going to be viewed. So I'm going to side with this, and it just trickles down. Like you said, they don't correlate sometimes. They're opposite.
Right.
Like I said, I get thanked every day by people that you would never think that would thank a law enforcement officer, and they do. And it brings it back to perspective that it's not all bad. So what you see is a small voice amplified by the media, but in reality, this is how the world works. Action versus theory.
So we had, I think it was the Zimmerman case where, not Zimmerman, who was the guy that got beat? The officer that got beat, and he was on the ground and punched out, and then he shot the guy, and they said he was an executor, and it was really, but he was ruled okay. It was a good shooting.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot the name of that case, but what came out after that was that they had photos of this police officer's face just pummeled.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, beaten up, and this guy, the suspect, really wailed on him. And all they showed on TV was the poor suspect when he was 12 years old, and the police officer's academy picture, and everything looked great.
Right.
But what really happened was that officer truly almost got killed, and he responded appropriately. If I was the chief or if I was that officer, and by the way, you know this, Nikki, I do this all the time. Hey, let's take a picture of that. Let's tweet this. I'm social media nuts, right? I would have got on my phone. I would have taken a picture of myself in the hospital with my face beaten and said, here's just what happened. Now, the police are going to say, oh, no, that's evidence. Well, but the law has not caught up with that because, in my opinion, it's evidence, but it also happened in the public. And other people saw it and other people took a picture of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the same thing as something you found at a crime scene. What do you think about officers getting more involved in social media, telling their story, maybe police officers being allowed to have some kind of copyright in their own webcam and their own work product? I know it sounds a little crazy, but if I said to you 20 years ago we're going to have body cams, you'd think I'm a nut.
Right.
And I predicted this, by the way.
Right.
I used to have my own dash cam. I used to rig up with an old Sony, and I put it on there, and I used to drive around with that. And they thought I was insane. Well, that's almost 25 years ago.
Right.
What do you think? I mean, wouldn't that have helped that case where that officer put that picture out of him almost beat up and goes, oh, well, sure, he was almost beat up. I guess it was okay. Not let's burn the city down first. And maybe they wouldn't have burned the city down.
Well, probably, but I think you work with an organization. You got to follow some guidelines of the organization of what can be done, and without just being out there freelancing.
And then to be honest, it's not always a good idea to give a mic to a police officer, and that's why they have somebody that they have a PR guy that speaks for them. And that's I'm not saying that because we can't talk to the media, but sometimes maybe it's better if we don't. Well,
listen, is it better to be silent and have everybody think you're a bunch of baby killers? I mean, I don't know. There's a trade-off there. Here's what I think is going to happen. You guys tell me what you think. And you take it first and you go next. I think in the next 20 years, if we don't do something about this, we're going to have a national police force. And I am scared to death of that because I got uncles and aunts and people who were in World War II, and one of my relatives was an ace in World War I, and I'm the only one that didn't go in the military because I would have been court-martialed. I know that for sure because I don't like people telling me what to do. But I went in the police service, right? And I respect people like yourself who have. I couldn't do it. I'd say, this is for you, and this is for your horse, and then I would get court-martialed. But I think the feds would like nothing more than to take all our police departments and nationalize them. I just don't see that not happening. They've already done it in Columbus. They've done it in a couple cities because they're going to think that one police force.
What did they do in Columbus?
The feds came in and said, you guys are all screwed up like LAPD, and now we're making it a federal mandate. You're going to follow all these federal guidelines. And LAPD is a great police department. I think it's probably the best in the world. There's a couple others that are close. But from going from a completely corrupt organization, what they were back in the day, to really a clean place. They fire or arrest one guy a day. You don't even know that, but they do, right? Mm-hmm. You couldn't put LAPD in New Orleans. You couldn't put it in San Antonio. You couldn't put it anywhere else because it's not going to match the culture.
That's right.
Of the people.
Absolutely.
No, in fact, when I started with my agency, one of the first things that they wanted to make very clear is this is not LAPD.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And they said it over and over. Just so, we're a small town. We're not LAPD. Don't be coming in here like.
Well, and a lot of times LAPD officers that transfer to smaller towns, they don't always succeed because it's hook 'em, book 'em, let's do it, and they do it a certain way. So, what do you think? Are you concerned about that? You're in it now, so
I hear you.
Do you get little love notes from the FBI saying, I think you guys could do it better this way? Suggestions. But some departments they've come in and said we're taking over, and it's happened.
Not on my step of the totem pole. I'm pretty low down, so no. And I don't think it'll be a nationalized law enforcement, a federal law enforcement. I just personally don't think so.
You've seen the examples, though. They've taken over a couple cities.
Yeah, but I think there's so many variables in between that there are so many states and cities and counties that are independently run.
Oh, right. I'm not saying it's a good idea.
No, I
but
hear
they'll
you.
think it is a good idea because they're the government. And they think they can do anything.
And you see where we're at right now in the state, in the country. It's like some believe this, and we're always going to have that. But now with media, it's on the forefront. So stuff that I didn't even know that went on in high school, I know in 30 seconds when something happened in New Mexico.
Right.
Yeah, and it may not even be the truth, but you got the information right away.
There, yeah.
You got the information immediately, and right now they're like, let's hold law enforcement accountable. We have to hold law enforcement accountable, but no one is holding the media accountable for reporting stuff that's half truths. And then they'll come back and go, oh, okay, well maybe that wasn't entirely true, but then they do a retraction and it's really small and it's at the bottom because they don't want to admit that what they reported was wrong. I understand it is great to have information immediately. When an active shooter event happens, I'm watching. But like Chuck and I have discussed before, nothing for the first 24 hours, very little of what's reported is going to be accurate.
It's not even close.
And not only that, if you knew someone from a department that responded to that, how long would you actually wait before you asked them?
Yeah, well, they're busy dealing with
exactly.
it. Exactly,
but I mean, you're not going. You're going to wait at least a day or two.
What did you say earlier? That's why we call it an investigation.
That's right.
That's right.
Exactly.
Now I have to take a quick break here. I got an important question here from somebody on Facebook. What do you mean this is for you and this is for your horse? Because I was off camera, apparently, when I said that. So let me demonstrate, okay? So which camera is it? Is it this one right here? Okay, here it is. So this is for you and this is for your horse. It's an old Irish greeting, just so you guys know what that means. Okay, now we're back.
Okay.
What can we do to make a police officer's job easier now? Let's say you're the chief and you're taking some ground-level leadership back upstairs and saying, Chief, I know you got to go to a conference. I know you got to do press and media stuff. I know you get a lot of pressure, but here's what we need in the field. What would you tell the chief?
Well, you have to go with concerns that what the concerns are. And you have to – people love feedback. If you ask me, if I'm a leadership position above you and I know something and I don't get it to you in time or I let you wait, it really signifies that, hey, I don't really care about you or your opinion. And you can't do that, especially when you ask people to go out there and possibly lose their life for an organization and what they believe in.
But make them wait until that yearly review and then like build up and then tell them everything at that yearly review.
And it's hard. I get it. Everyone has meetings and stuff like that. But if feedback is a huge thing. Information is a huge thing.
So you're telling the chief to feed stuff back down.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
But once he solidifies what needs to be
Right.
solidified, and you can't just put feedback down and say, hey, I went to a meeting today and this was said. And then the next week it's a follow-up and it'll never end, right? So once it gets solidified, deliver it down. But your larger departments, there's filters along the way, right? There's chiefs, there's captains, there's lieutenants, there's that. And by the time the original content came from the chief, that it gets down to you as a cop, is it the same content?
No, it's not.
Right? Has it been morphed?
No, it's
Right.
always changed.
Right.
We know that from doing interviews in the field. That
Exactly.
happens. Right.
Yeah.
Comes back differently.
So you have to listen to what your guys need, but as a ground level guy, you also need to understand that he wears completely different shoes than you.
But he shouldn't.
No, he does, because he doesn't do the same job as you.
I know he does. He kind of does in one way. I'll slightly disagree. I think he does it the same way in that he has to always constantly put forward the right image.
Oh yes.
But he's usually, and I say he, she. Don't send me any emails that I said he instead of she. Okay. They have to put forward the same good image as a line officer.
You're right.
And a lot of times I don't think they do. They put forward a good chief image. You see what I mean?
Their drivers are different than us.
Right.
Their drivers are different than us. They came from supposedly where we came from, but we're still doing it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you guys this. So you see, and I'm just started my master's, so this is something that we had to cover.
Oh, she has a master's. Oh,
No,
I
no,
can't
no,
compete with my
just
small
started.
security guy radio brain.
She's smart.
I'm about 2 years away from it. But so one of the things that we talk about because it's for criminal justice is you see people they're political players. So they came from from low level, they came from patrol, but they weren't there very long. So their whole goal is to be promoted. They want that for their career. And I mean that's great because you have other patrol guys that they don't ever want that. So it's good that you have people that are motivated to do that. But what I heard was they're not getting the level of experience. They're moving up too quickly. They're I don't say they kiss ass or whatever it is that they need to do to get.
You can say ass on Security Guy TV. You can say that. Or brown eyes, they say in Australia.
But do you think? I mean, did you see that now?
I kind of use that analogy as the same thing as like, I've been a cop for 20 years. I don't need to know anything more. Come on. You know what I mean? So if someone's a fast mover, I look at the individual. I like I'm saying this earlier before, I'm not trying to lump everyone together, right? Because it's so easy to fall into that, they rose through the ranks. And everyone gets summarized like that. But if you look at the individual, so I say, hey, Nikki was an officer for 2.5 years, but god dang, she was a really good officer. She led high investigations. She did this, she did this, she did this. It was the next step above that you wanted to become a corporal or a sergeant now. And then you kept building and kept building. That is just you, and you do good wherever you go. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But if you lump it together and say, well, Nikki only did 2 years on patrol. But look how good you do your job, right?
It's quality,
you can have,
not quantity.
well, exactly. You can have someone that's a cop for 20 years and then take the sergeant's test. That doesn't mean that they're great. Look at the individual. Look what they produce. A lot of my thing now is the negativity can drain you out, right? It can really burn you down, and you can really get sucked in with the negativity. But it is truly, I don't know any other word. It's pretty cool to build somebody up because everybody wants to be built up. They'll tell you no. It's hard to interrupt free will to train someone that doesn't want to be trained. But for like my business, when I go talk, you can see people that want to succeed.
They do, right.
They want to succeed. And when you push that and you let them know that you're just like them, and they'll look at your background and whatnot, and they think that you're better than them, and you reference yourself as just like them because truly you really are. I did some extra stuff, but people want to be built up.
So why do police departments approach people, officers, let's say, and why do they tear them down? Because really it's not, I mean, yes, they give accommodations. Yes, there's a lot of those kind of things, but sometimes some police supervisors, and by the way, I've worked for 3 departments and I worked for a lot of them.
Yep.
They're just like nitpicky. It's like they can do something, so they do something. Instead of looking at the strategic implication of what they're saying or doing, they just come in and say, oh, you're not wearing your hat on the right job.
I think that
How about
not
explaining why it's
everyone-
good?
Not everyone in a leadership role is a leader.
No.
And I think that's exactly what you're saying. What you said earlier was you don't approach leadership as it's not a one thing fits all.
Right.
It's what's good for the individual. A leader has to understand that their entire team each person, they have different motivators. And that's exactly what you said. I was going to tell you that earlier.
Yeah. I mean, it's like when I took my sergeant's oral board in the Army, and they proposed a question to me about what it's like, what it is to be a sergeant. And I said, my opinion is that just because you obtain the rank, because you achieve the points, you don't just earn respect. You get respect. You have to earn it. And if you, by the manual in the military, that you don't have to dig the ditch with the guys, you can tell them to dig the ditch. But if you show them that you're down there helping them, right, they'll do anything for you. If your people respect you, they'll do what you ask. If they don't respect you.
Well, this is really important. We had a guy at Culver City. What was his name? He was just leaving when I got there. Old timer, right? Probably started back in the 30s or something, really. But boy, if he asked you to go sharpen a pencil, 5 people jumped up and wanted to sharpen the pencil.
But why is that?
They loved the guy. They just respected him because he respected them.
That's right.
That's the bottom line.
Right.
And I think you see this, especially with new police supervisors, where they assume that the respect I'm supposed to have as a new supervisor is automatic, and you're supposed to give it to me.
That's exactly
I'm a sergeant.
Right.
And I don't think that's true.
Yeah, I don't think it's true either.
I can follow your rules. I can
Yeah.
do what you tell me so you don't write me up.
Right.
Not the same thing as respect. And I think
Right.
they mix those two things up.
Right.
What rank are you, Nikki, in your job?
Yeah, I don't-
Patrol?
Yeah.
Okay. Any aspirations to be a sergeant?
Not yet.
No, I never took the sergeant's test myself. I don't want to. It's like pushing a car. If I had stayed in and I got hurt, we'd still be pushing a car.
And
around.
some people don't want it.
But I can tell you that I'm constantly pushing everyone in my department. And I mean, all the way up to the mayor. I'm constantly, hey, guys, we can be doing this better. Hey, look, this can reflect negatively on this. I am constantly, and yeah, sometimes I think I drive them all nuts. But it's, I mean, you know, Steve, leaders produce good leaders. When you said you have sergeants that they're like, no, I'm the sergeant. I'm in charge, damn it. You have to do what I say. Is that because that's the kind of leadership that they had? So bad leaders produce more bad leaders, or can.
They can. You're absolutely right.
Or they can ruin good leaders.
And we've all been around leaders, and we pick certain traits from leaders along the way. We don't mimic. We don't try not to mimic. I tell people, don't mimic. Don't be somebody, but pick up traits. Someone may have a really good trait,
Right.
leadership trait, and pick that up because it worked and you liked it. And then, but you'll always have in leadership your micro version leaders and your macro version.
Now, I've never been in the military, but a lot of my family members have. And you have.
Yes.
Marines?
Army.
Really? I
Yeah.
picked up, he looks like a Navy SEAL with those. Doesn't he? You know? Well, anyway. Right. What unit?
I was in 3 different. I was a combat engineer, so
Okay.
I did explosives.
Oh, boy. Okay. Bigger arms in my legs and explosive. I got to be very careful. Why is it different in the military? It seems, I've not been in the military, but, you know, the sergeant says, come on, do it, you do it. Is there the same equality of possible disrespect for a leader in the military as you see in police work?
No.
They're kind of paramilitary, you know what I mean?
Well, they are paramilitary, but no, because the military, that's the culture. That is the culture.
Oh, okay. It's a good point.
Your culture is, if an NCO tells you to do something, you do it.
You don't take it personally.
When I was in,
Right.
I mean, I was stationed in Hawaii, and I was just bebopping across the parade field, and I got chewed out and had to do push-ups, but it was a commo sergeant. He wasn't even in my company. It was a commo sergeant, but he was an E6,
Right.
and I was an E3, so I did push-ups, right? That was bred into you.
Well, we've lost our other camera, but we're still talking.
Okay,
We
cool.
still have an audio feed. Oh, boy, this is not a great launch of the show, but
So no more hand gestures, Chuck.
no more hand gestures. I can't do that. But the audio is still going down, so people can still hear. I'll put up a graphic here in a second. Tell me what you think about some of the shootings that are going on. And again, I'm not passing judgment on them. The facts that I read and statistics I look at it say there really isn't any more or less shootings, and it's all kind of the same. Maybe there's a little up one year and a little down one year, but the appearance is cops are a bunch of trigger happy, people running off the handle.
Perception is reality.
Exactly right. What's your take on that?
I think the same thing is who's given the data for the statistic. You know what I mean?
Well, it's always the media, and then you go look at it yourself.
Well,
and
I mean,
dig it up
and where are they getting it from? So
Right.
you know what I'm saying? Who's the source? And then I can make a statistic work for me in my favor, right? I can inflame it and stuff. So, and then everything looks bigger than what it really is if it's broadcasted every day.
Well, that's true. It just keeps repeating it over and over again. Right.
So in people's minds are being refreshed constantly that another shooting. So let's say in the United States there were 7 shootings in 1 week. There's probably more, right? Law enforcement involved shootings, but 7. What no one hears is 6 million contacts that went great, and people got their lives saved by law enforcement. You know what I mean?
I wish somebody would publish that study because there are so many lives that are saved.
Absolutely.
And the other thing I tell people is, look, there's 1 bazillion radio calls a year, and 1,200 people get shot by the police. Isn't it about 1,200 a year? It's something like that. 12, 14. I'm not saying I'm not taking away from any of those shootings. They're all tragic, right? But if there's millions and millions of calls and the percentage of shootings is 0.5 of 1%, I don't think there's a problem. Now it looks to be such a problem because anybody getting killed is problematic and it's terrible and it's difficult. But if you turn around and look at drunk driving, 32,000 people a year get killed in cars, and nobody screams about that when the guy's drunk. Oh, we'll put him in jail, and then, you get out of jail, that kind of thing. I don't see how people don't think that's more outrageous than.
Well, they probably would if it was broadcast every day.
Well, I guess that's a good point.
The perception would be, and more people die, right? So it's just how it's being portrayed and broadcast and stuff. There is a ton of good dudes and good gals that put their lives on the line every single day. There is, all across the U.S. All these departments. For someone to go out there and serve something other than themselves, to me, I think that says quite a bit about somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, as a reserve, tell me how this differs at all.
Oh, it doesn't.
Well, do you get less respect as your reserve, for example? Is there an interdepartment rivalry between reserves and non-reserves?
I don't. When I started my academy, I was actually with a much bigger department, and they had a huge reserve program. And I can tell you that the feeling was much different than being in a smaller agency. Now, when you have a big reserve program, you have a lot of reserves, they have a lot of limitations. Well, you can't ever drive a vehicle. Well, you can't ever talk on the radio. Well, you can't ever, there's a whole lot of you can't. My agency, because we're so small, they have to use everyone as a full-time officer, even though we're reserves. And I've seen that with other small agencies that are using reserves. Well, it's free labor. And some agencies they'll pay, and maybe they pay them less than what they pay a full-time officer. But for me, no one ever goes, oh, well, she's just a reserve officer. No one ever says that. But I have seen it in bigger agencies where the agency policy makes a big difference. They draw that big line. Well, you guys are just reserves, and it's a culture. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's hard because a reserve can be in this exact same situation with about half the training as a full-time officer. And I mean, that's where I am because I'm used as a full-time officer. So I don't think that I know when I first started Academy saying, well, I'm just a reserve, it was something that I actually said. Mm-hmm. And
well, it's the same training.
And I stopped saying it, and now I don't ever want another reserve officer to say, well, I'm just a reserve. No, you are a reserve, which means not only do you do this, you do it with no pension. A lot of us do it with no money, but we still do it. And I'm telling you, I love what I do. I absolutely love the interaction that I have with kids, adults. My town is very small, but it's still, I love that interaction.
Tell me the difference between military. I mean, I like to know the differences because I try to see the parallels. So you said earlier that military people accept the culture of somebody telling them what to do as following orders, and that's all a good thing. Why doesn't that happen in police work? Because it's not much of a different structure. Well, I'll get fired if I disobey an order. I'll lose my job.
True, it's not. But from the day one that you go into basic training, that's your culture. It's slammed into your side of your face, and that's the culture. And then when you come out to your military career, I can speak for combat arms. Other units maybe a little bit more lax, but it is literally, it was that way my whole 6 years, and I didn't know any different.
Right.
So law enforcement, you got a lot more personal item. I mean, you are the U.S. military. You are their property. You belong to them. You're 9 to 5.
So you signed a contract.
Right. Doesn't really, it doesn't really apply, right? So if weapons aren't cleaned, you're staying there till 2 in the morning.
No, well,
You know what I
that's
mean?
true.
So
Yeah.
here,
And there's no overtime.
the biggest thing for me is the unions or the guilds, the workers' rights, and I think you have to have that. But that's where it gets in the middle of, you didn't have it in the military. You could get deployed for 30 days. And you're like, hey, I didn't get a coffee break. Then no one cares.
So why do people that come out of the military, why are they more motivated people? They really are. I mean, I worked with a lot of Vietnam vets. They were my training officers back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And now I guess, people, younger cops are going to have Gulf War veterans probably, right?
Yep.
And I always respected them, and I always thought they really taught me a lot of things. In the military, people that come into police work seem to do better. I don't know why. They seem to be able to put up more nonsense. For me, I can't. Some sergeant tell me something that's wrong, and outside the law, I just would flip, and I'd write them up and say, I'm not doing it.
Steve, do you think that's a different level of discipline? Because that is also a big part of military culture.
Yes, discipline is for military. But again, just like law enforcement, you're doing something bigger than yourself. You're joining the U.S. military, right?
But joining a major. Well, being a police officer, I got to tell you,
Which is the same thing. I'm saying there's
a lot of power. You don't have the same power you have in the military,
You're right. You're
And
right.
You have almost as much power as the President of the United States, literally, to do all kinds of things. In fact, you have more power than he does in a lot of ways.
Discretionary power.
Yeah.
It's discretionary, yeah. You can arrest people, that take away their liberty. That's a big deal.
So for me, what I did is I looked at the difference between military and law enforcement. For me, was the fact that the military tears you down completely, but then rebuilds you. And they push. If you don't, in my unit, if you didn't promote, something was wrong with you.
Oh, okay.
I made sergeant in 2.5 years.
Now
It was the driver.
This is a very interesting point. We have no stress academies in California. Did you go to a stress academy for police?
Are you talking?
If you have to say the answer is no, Chuck. I did not go to a stress academy as a police officer.
I didn't think the academy was very stressful. No.
Well, I went to Rio Hondo. So at Rio Hondo, here's some of the things they did, which at the time I thought had nothing to do with police work, but I found out later they did. So one day, Carlos Reynosa and I were doing quick changes in the locker room, and I never could remember my combination. To this day, I can't remember my combination. And I couldn't get dressed. So when I come back on the grinder, Carlos and I are both in our sweats, and everybody else is in Class A's. That was not a good thing.
Right.
So the TAC officer comes up and says, Harold, you're a jackass. Reynosa, you're a jackass. And I want you two to hold hands, and I want you to skip across the parking lot. And Harold, you're he, and Reynosa, you're haw, and you're going to go hee-haw, all around the parking lot. And we had to do that for an hour, a whole hour, while everybody else was in class doing stuff, right?
That's something they do in the military right there.
Yeah, and then, they would take your tie and they throw it in a tree, make you climb up the tree. They throw hot coffee on you if you knocked on the TAC officer door. Officer Harold requests permission. If you didn't knock, you got a cup of hot coffee on you. They'd literally yell and scream at you in your face. And now these were all ex-Marine DIs, right? And we started with, 230 people and graduated 80. People just dropped like flies every hour for the first 2 weeks. There's the stress, right? I thought it was all kind of fun because it was simulated. I knew it was simulated.
Right.
Still stressful.
Yeah.
And then somebody decided after our class, which was class 61 in 83, to sue everybody. And they got rid of stress academies in California. That was the last stress academy, class 61 in 1983. And now it's like, okay, so I go up to the Napa Valley Academy.
Kinder, softer.
And they got a balloon for their badge logo. And literally, we're out there on the grinder, and there's balloons floating over the field, real balloons. It's so relaxing.
Do you guys have color time?
Almost, right? Now, we're the old-timers doing the, recertification course. But here's the new academy, walking down the hallway. Hey, how you doing? How you doing? Oh, boy, at the CHP Academy, I was in motor school. When the motors walked in, everybody jumped to attention. They made a hall in the hallway. They made a line. You got to sit at any table you wanted to. There was a respect. When the tax officer came in, everybody stood at attention. And these guys at this academy are like, let's go get some coffee and get out there and say the Pledge of Allegiance and raise the flag. And I'm going, what the is this? Now, if you can't handle simulated stress, you got no business being in a police department. And why they got rid of that, I just don't know. I don't think it makes a kinder, gentler police officer out of you. I think training and empathy and compassion that all police officers do have at their home most of the time, and maybe they don't bring it into the field because you have to kind of adopt one voice for people, right? I think this is a problem. So we're taking away civil servant positions for chiefs. We're having no stress academies. We have no camaraderie in some of the younger guys. It's just a 9-to-5 job. I'll go get another one. Some agencies are making cops retire later. San Jose, you got to work 40 years before you get your retirement, which means basically you're never going to retire.
And why is that, though?
Because they don't want to save the money.
Well, that and the recruitment's down.
And recruitment's down, right?
Yeah.
So you got to keep your and you'll be dead by the time if you stay until you're 65, you'll surely be dead, right? The stress
Yeah.
part of it gets you, right? So I don't know. I think these are all things that contribute to this morale issue and this perception. I still think most police departments are run efficiently and they're all a bunch of good guys and things, but the media gets a hook in these things and that's it. You're doomed.
Yeah, it gets infected, and it takes a while to get it undone, and to sit with the media. And there's departments that have really good MROs that talk to the media and kind of get it straight. And the media in certain parts of the country play very well, and they understand it.
Yeah, I want to say that we shouldn't generalize and say the media, because we actually have, for my agency, we have ones that work incredibly well with us.
Well,
And
that's
they're-
local, though.
And and it is local.
See, now what the irony about that is, because I know something about broadcasting, well, apparently not very much, because I can't get this camera to work, but back in the day at Fox News when they started it, you have owner-operated stations and you have affiliates. So in your town, Nikki, you could have, Fox 12. That could be privately owned, and they license the name and they make it a Fox station, but it's still privately owned. Or it's an owner-operated Fox station. And local stations tend to get it right on the local news, and there's not too much editorializing and commentary and stuff. And then when you go to the national level, you get this dialogue of craziness.
Well, you guys want a really good example. You guys hear about in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, 3 young kids broke into a house, and the 23-year-old who was at home at the time shot and killed all 3 of them.
Oh, I did.
Oh,
hear
yeah,
about
that was recent.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they just decided not to file charges against him. Well, if you read the local news, it reads entirely differently than CNN or in national news, and it's like, oh, it's so horrible. Look what this guy did, and we're locals and we're reading this going, wow, really? So nationally, that's what everybody's being told about this. Oh, these poor kids.
There's a national.
They hardly did anything wrong. I mean, all they had was some brass knuckles and a knife. And I mean, they only broke into this house. This was only the second time they broke in. I mean, they hardly deserved to.
Yeah, Facebook had their grandfather on there saying, "Oh, these poor guys got shot and boo."
Well, they did something wrong, but they didn't really deserve to die for it. Well, neither did that 23-year-old, and clearly, they weren't going to throw him a little party with those brass knuckles and a knife.
Yeah, it's local level versus national level. I was in Nigeria last year, and the perspective that they have about America gets summarized by one station of news that they get, world news.
Really, one? Which
Yeah.
one? Do you know what station?
CNN.
Oh no! Well, they're doomed on that.
Well, but they'll ask you a ton of questions. Is this true? Is this true? Is this true?
Oh no, that's a good point. I have a friend of mine she was on our show years ago in the Netherlands is the proper way to say it. Don't say Holland. It's not how it works. It's the Netherlands, all right? And she, about once a month, this girl in the United States that I know told me that she went into an emergency room and she was pregnant, and they said, you can't come in here and be treated because you're about, and I said, no. And, oh, no, she swears it's true. And I said, here's the law. So I sent her a copy of our law about hospitals and emergencies, right? Nobody can be turned away.
Right.
And she believed the girl because that's all she knows.
Right.
So I can see, and the perceptions about our current president and the election and the corruption, it's amazing what people do not know about the United States. It's only what people are telling them. In the news. It's so controlled.
And it's just what I was talking about earlier is the national level news. Talk about where you work as a local law enforcement, and you're like, no, it's pretty good here. People are thanking me every day, and
That's right.
It's not what, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So the perception and how it's delivered.
Well, we pulled it off. It's 7:59. We're going to wrap it up. Sorry about losing the cameras. I don't know what happened. I'll have to go back and check that. But for now, let me just do this. Let me push in your graphic there, Mr. Steve. So we can see Steve.
Mm-hmm.
There was your... it's not going to work. I got it all cocked up, as they say. But thanks for coming on the show. And your website is 3ArrowTME.com, right?
Yes.
And Nikki, yours is NikkiBurgett.com. That's very easy to say, but spell it for everybody.
NikkiBurgett.
Excellent. Let me see if I can put your graphic up there. I probably won't be able to do it, but I'll try. Now, see, I get everything all messed up. Oh, well.
And I'm officially NJ Burgett, LLC.
Oh, excellent. All right. And we can reach you for what type of training?
So any corporate security issues, workplace violence prevention, emergency action plan creation.
All right. Excellent. Well, thanks for helping us launch the new, slightly less technically successful than I anticipated version of Security Guy Radio. But we'll get it right next time. And tune in every Monday night, 7 o'clock here on live stream from Sunset Gower Studios in Hollywood. And hopefully we'll get it right next week. Thanks for tuning in, and good night.
One of them wanted to be the security guy, claimed he was a security guy.
It's all messed up.